I was asked to comment on where and when the initial idea of the Order of St. Augustine, in collaboration with the United Nations, had come about. And from what I remember, we're going back to the early 90s. And at that period of time, working in Latin America for the renewal of the Order of Latin America, a fellow member of the Vicariate of Chulucanas in Peru, John Lydon, was executive director of the Organization of Latin American Augustinians, OALA, and at an assembly of the OALA delegates in preparation for the general chapter in 1995, the topic came up, I believe, inspired by John Zura, who had worked with John Lydon and Bob Nadar in a presentation given in Brazil uh, on the concept of the environment and what Augustine had to say about this, to bring patristic studies into our current times, to reflect what Augustine and other fathers of the church had said, but specifically Augustine on contemporary topics that could be applied to contemporary topics. And their conversations brought it to the fore. I believe it's John Lydon who encouraged the assembly of OALA to present to the general chapter of 1995 the proposal that the Augustinian order become associated to the United Nations, to the Department of Communications as a non-profit, a non-government organization. And in effect, in 1995, the general chapter did approve that proposal. And John being present as a member of the province of St. Thomas of Villanova, a delegate of our province. And I was elected at that same chapter, not being president, I was elected to the General Council, and John recommended to me, John Lydon, to see what could be done to make effective that proposal, which had been approved in the General Chapter in 1995. So I was fortunate to be on the ground in the General Council, and the efforts and initiative and promotion of Miguel Ángel Catsitas, the prior general at that time. He asked me to work on presenting our request with the collaboration of Javier Perez de Cuellar, who had a previous Secretary General of the UN who was a Peruvian and an ex-alumnus of our school's Colegio San Agustin in Lima. So working with him, working with John Zura, with the collaboration of John Lydon, presented the request from the General Council of the Order of St. Augustine worldwide to the United Nations to become associated. I remember specifically October of 1996, presenting the documentation to a secretary in the office at the UN, and she said, "Well, when were you founded?" And I said, 1256. And she looked at her watch. I said, no, the year 1256. She thought it was referring to earlier in the day. And then she was so thoroughly impressed when she realized that we are an order for centuries, that it speedily passed through the process. And in April of 1997, we were approved as a member of the Department of Public Information of the UN, so associated. And since then, much work has been done. But in my recollection, those are the initial movements. And the encouragement for doing that was the very fact of who we are, from our very early documents, but also our Constitution. The very nature of the order says the peculiar influence of the Holy See in the founding of the order directed its activity especially toward the service of the universal church. And for this reason, our order wished to render a particular devotion and loyalty to the church and the papacy. So who we are as Augustinians, founded not by St. Augustine, but founded by the church, to follow the rule of St. Augustine, to be the order of St. Augustine for a better world within the church. sort of the dialogue of nations which occurs at the UN is an apt place for us to bring to bear our charism at the service of the papacy. John Paul II, now Saint John Paul II, when he spoke at the UN, said that no organization, not even the UN, can alone solve the global problems which are constantly brought to its attention. It's the privileged task of non-governmental organizations, NGOs, to help bring these concerns into the communities and the homes of the people, and then to bring back to the UN established agencies the aspirations, the desire, the needs of the people. And that is, in effect, why the Order of St. Augustine chose to become an NGO at the UN and has continued to grow in that regard. I remember I was working with the Council of the Order to see what we could do to help collaborate with the permanent observer mission of the Holy See, to join our voice with that of the Church at the UN. How willing are we to become involved was the question. So we decided to have a session of the 1998 Intermediate General Chapter of the Order at the site of the UN. And we went from Villanova, where after 30 years, the Constitutions having been written there in 1968, in 1998, the second time for history of the Order, a General Chapter of the Order realized in the United States, we traveled from Villanova to New York and had interviewed there with papal representatives at the UN and had a session at the General Assembly chamber, how we realized, yes, we can be involved in promoting, establishing a better world through our current Augustinian apostolates. So a really significant moment was when all of the major superiors of the Order of St. Augustine present at the Intermediate General Chapter actually were physically present at the United Nations and realized, oh yes, we can do something. So in our original documents, we established those early people who came on board, presence at the UN. With presence at the UN, the General Council had asked three people, Jesus Guzman, a previous Assistant General, member of the province of Michoacan, to be present physically at the UN for us. He had previously been working at Chulucanas in Peru. He came to the Bronx, St. Nicholas of Tolentine Parish, presence of the Villanova province, where he established an office of the order as an NGO at the UN. Working with him was Jack Deegan of the province of Villanova and Hilary Tagliaferri of the province of Malta. So those three men met regularly with John Zur and myself over those several years of initial presence, and we worked with the Council of the Order to establish as priorities education, since so many of us were involved in education, one level or another, literacy for the culture of peace. At that time, it was significant to work development and the UN Millennium Goals, which now have been surpassed with Sustainable Development Goals of this third millennium in the history of the Church. And then the promotion and the defense of human rights. Jesus and that whole team, along with the Order's presence, tried to establish contact with other parts of the Order, men and women, male and female, the secular presence, as well as the Second Order and the First Order. I remember Sister Irene Bailey, the Assumptionist Sisters, how significant her support and presence in that early stages as we established these priorities and worked together with other groups who had similar priorities. So were these priorities significant at that time? I would say, yeah, they responded to a particular need. The question, are there new areas of interest for the Order? I'd say without a doubt. Without a doubt. Our challenge has always been, is to respond with the gospel, with our charism, to the needs of the people of God, of the people of the world, to respond as well as we can from who we are. what we believe as an order. Have the needs changed since 1998 when these particular priorities were established? I'd say yes. Yes, there's been growth in so many areas. So the need then for those who represent the vicariates, the provinces of the order, those who represent the order itself, to step back and take a look. And what are the signs of the times? What are our needs now? We don't do things as we did 50 years ago or 20 years ago. 40 years ago, the internet didn't even exist. We couldn't be doing what we're doing right here if we just decided to remain faithful to the means. No, we remain faithful to the gospel, and we do it in an Augustinian fashion. Our commitment to community, to search together for a better world, to share our insights from interiority for a better world, to share our resources for a better world. So, yes, I think that we need to actualize our priorities, but we don't need to come from the top down. We need to come from the bottom up. We need the local justice and peace promoter of the community, of the province, of the vicariate, to together work with the other justice and peace promoters to help us reflect on what are our needs in the area we're working, and then find out globally what are the needs which we can all contribute to as an order, the Augustinian order at the UN, contributing to the dialogue of nations alongside the Holy See's mission, present there, standing up for as a conscience and being committed to actions. So, a word of advice that I could offer: I think we've got great people, men and women, working to promote the gospel and in this forum for the dialogue of nations. I just encourage all to try to think the global consequences of our local actions, be it working towards a better environment, not just for my nation or my local community, but for the world, the consequences. That's the blessing that we have being an international order, that we can consider not only how we can help one another through joining forces, but how we can think together for a better world for everyone. All things, always, for everyone. Sustainable development, and bring the gospel to bear on those programs which the United Nations, which our local communities foster to help this become truly a better world, more in touch with those values which Augustine was so enamored of, which Jesus proclaimed in that early Christian community in Jerusalem lived. Become a community of faith, a community of worship, a community of service, and a community which reaches out. This is how the Augustinian order, bringing our charism to bear, strives to today say what needs to be said to make this become a better world for everybody.